Anyways, today's daf is Kuf Chav Gimel. It's a very long daf, and we are way behind. So let's get started, and we will try to catch up. It's a lot of Agadata. I'm sure there will be questions, but let us give it a try. So we're up to the Mishnah on daf Kuf Chav Bet Amud Bet 122b, and it's almost near the top of the page. Says the Mishnah something very strange. Echad haben ve'echad habat b'nachala. It's the same for a son as it is for a daughter in regards to inheritance. Now, we know that's not true, so the Gemara is going to ask what the heck the Mishnah is talking about. Ella, says the Mishnah, except Shaben Notel Pishnayim, the son gets, the Bechor of the son gets a double portion in the Nichsei Ha'av, in possessions that come to him from his father. But remember that sons and daughters inherit a mother, but the Bechor does not get a double portion in the mother's thing, only the father's thing. Now, of course, that has nothing to do with the beginning of the Mishnah. We're going to try to understand it. And furthermore, says our Mishnah, Habanot nizonot b'nechsei ha'av, daughters, remember the halacha we had in Ketubot, and we're going to have later in maybe in a couple of weeks, that if a man dies and leaves behind children who are minors, or majors, his possessions all go to his sons. But if he leaves behind daughters, even if he has sons, and they are minors and they're not independent, right? Then he has to feed them. And so money is set aside to feed those young girls. And basically, if there's a lot of money, then you set aside certain money to feed the girls till they're turned the age of majority, let's say, and the rest goes to the sons as Yerusha. If there's not a lot of money, then it all goes to the daughters and the sons get nothing. Right? So that's called nechasim mu'atim. But, says our Mishnah, that's only true from the father. The mother's money does not support the daughters. And so if a mother dies and she's got minor daughters, the money does not go to them. It goes to the sons and the daughters become charity cases. So says the Mishnah, habanot, daughters, nizonot b'nichsei ha'av, they are supported from possessions of the father ahead of the inheritance of the sons. But eino nizonot b'nichsei, but they do not get nizonot from the money of the mother ahead of the sons. Okay, we'll get to that later in the Gemara. Says
mizonot meutim, is that it?
Yeah, because if there's a lot of money, let's say there's $1 million and it costs $100,000 to give them food. So you put aside $100,000 and the other 900,000 goes to the sons, right? But if there's nechasim muatim, meaning there's only $100,000 and that's how much it costs to pay for their fund for food, then the money all goes to the girls and nothing goes to the boys.
On what basis do they make the estimate? They could be 2 years old, so that's 10 years, right?
Yeah, that's what you do. You got to make an estimate. I mean, they do this all the time nowadays. How much it will cost? I don't know how they do it, but you figure out what the rate is for guardianship now this is for food, not necessarily for college, right? Which would be a lot more money, but that's what they do. So they figure out how old they are until they hit the age. It's a little debate about what age. But let's say the age of 12, we'll stick with. Anyways, so that is the point of the Mishnah. I'll ask the Gemara, third wide line. My echad haben ve'echad habat l'nachala. What do you mean? It's the same for a son as for a daughter, or daughter as a son for nachala. Ilema, if you mean to say the yartigi hadadi, that they, it's an egalitarian Yerusha and they get equal, that's not true. Hatnan, we had a Mishnah already, it said, ben kodem labat. A son comes first, and kol yotzei haben, where am I? Kol yotzei yirecho shel ben, all of the descendants of a son are kodmin labat. So girls are not equal, daughters are not equal to sons. Amar Rav Nachman Yitzchak Hachi Kamar. This is what it means to say. Remember, we had a whole debate earlier, and we'll have this again, about this concept of ra'oi and muchzak, things that the father who died has in his possession, and things that when the father died are owed to him. Right? Let's say he has possession of $1 million. I'm going to use money, but obviously they didn't use a lot of money then. Had $1 million, but he had a debt of $500,000 that was due to him. Right? So we talked earlier about the fact that a bechor gets a second portion in what is muchzak, what is in the possession of the father when he dies, but not in that which is owed to the father, what is ra'oi to the father. So you might have thought the same thing is true about daughters and sons, that it's only sons that get nachala that comes to the father after the fact, after he died, but not daughters. So maybe that's the point of the Mishnah. And a son and a daughter, the Chiddush, of course, is the daughter, get Yerusha that comes to the father after he's dead, or possessions that come, right? So echad haben, they get money that's ra'oi, meaning ra'oi means it's going to come, it's due to the father, and the same way, things that are muchzak, that are already in the hands of the father. Says Gemara, so that's the chiddush. that a daughter gets things, not just when the father's dead, but if the father later inherits or the father later gets possession, the daughters get that as well. But Hanami Tanina, that also is a Mishnah that we learned last week together, which said, Benot Slavchad, the daughters of Slavchad, who were in a situation when there were no sons, they were just daughters, they were Natnu Shlosha Chalakim Benachala. The Mishnah said they got 3 portions. One was Chelek Avihem, their father Slavchad's portion, Shahayam Yotzei Mitzrayim, because he left Egypt. And they got a Chelko Im Achiv B'nichsei Chefer, right? Their grandfather, Chefer, also left Egypt, also had a portion. He died after Tzlavchad, but it doesn't matter, right? When he died, his money went equally, let's say, to all of his children, all of his sons. But one of his sons was Tzlavchad, who was dead, whose daughters got that. So we know already that daughters get in something that's called Ra'ui. That wasn't the father's when he died, but became his after the fact. So there's no Chiddush in our Mishnah. And furthermore, the next words in the Mishnah make no sense. The Mishnah said both the sons and daughters are equal in Nachala, except that a son only gets double from Nichsei Av, not Nichsei Av. What connection is that with anything, right? Oh, my Ella. What's
so isn't that Muksach? Why is that Ra'ui? Ra'ui would be for those people entering the land of Egypt, into Eretz Israel. That's what we were learning before.
Ra'ui is because when Slavchad died, his father was alive. So Slavchad did not own what his father owned. So at the time Slavchad died, he did not have his father's Yerusha. But he knew that eventually everyone dies, right? His father was going to die. So it was coming to him. There's no way around that, for sure, unless the world ended, right? It was coming to him, but it was not his at that time because his father was alive. So that is called Ra'oi, right? Muchzak is what the father had when he died, which is the portion in Israel. So
we were learning that at that time we were learning the difference between Ra'oi and Muchzak is with those who left Egypt versus those who were entering the land of Israel.
Nothing to do with that. Ra'oi is what you have. Muchzak is what you have in your possession at the time you die. Ra'oi are things that come to you, your estate, because you're dead, after your death.
Well, we were learning a little differently then.
Well, I'm not sure what exactly you're referring to, but there could be other ways to learn it in other contexts, but not here. And again, Ra'oi means that it's coming to you. You know it's coming. So I gave 2 examples. One is the death of a father, and the other is a loan. So says Gemara, well, El Amr of Papa, I've got another explanation for our Mishnah. Hachik Amr. This is what our Mishnah means to say. Echad haben ve'echad habat, both a son and a daughter, notel chelik b'bichora. They get a portion of the double, meaning, of course, a daughter does not get a bechora, meaning if their father was a bechor and the father dies and has no sons, it goes to his daughter. If he has sons, it goes to his sons. But the even if a father dies and his father's alive, right? So at the time the father, let's call it Slavchad, is the father dies, he didn't have the portion yet of his father Chefer. But if subsequently his father Chefer dies, the fact that Slavchad is dead doesn't change the fact that he's a bechor. And so he gets a double portion from Chefer and it goes to his sons or his daughters. So that's the Chiddush. Says Gemara, well, that's not a really good proof either, because that's true, but we already learned that. Hanami Tanina. We had that in the next words in the Mishnah that we just quoted, is that, remember, Tzlunot Tzlavchad got 3 portions. 1 from their father Tzlavchad, and 2 from their grandfather Chefer, because their father Tzlavchad was a Bechor. And now we're quoting the Mishnah. Shahaya Bechor, since their father Tzlavchad was a Bechor, Notel Shnei Chalakim, they got 2 portions from Chefer. And again, it makes no sense anyways in the Mishnah, because what's the next clause? Except that a man gets double of Bechor, gets double in Nichsei Aviv, but not Nichsei Imo. We didn't mention anything about Nichsei Aviv or Nichsei Imo. Vod my Ella. Ella Mervashi, I got another explanation. You know what it is? This is a new halacha that I'm introducing here. I don't think we've had it before, but I might be wrong. But we're definitely going to have it again later, which is the great question of, can you do something different than what the Torah says to do? What if a guy says, I don't like my son, my middle son. I want to give all my money to my oldest son, or I want to give it all to my youngest son, or whatever. Give it all to my daughters, or give it all to a stranger, right? So the Mishnah is going to say later that you cannot do that for a stranger. You cannot give Yerusha to something that the Torah says is not Yoresh. You can't say in my will, I want, a charity to be Yoresh everything I have. You can give a gift while you're alive. I mean, that's your money, but you cannot change Yerusha. It's the way it is in the Torah. However, there's an opinion later of Yochanan ben Broka that as long as it's a person who's deserving of Yerusha, meaning if you have sons, it's one of the sons, or if you have daughters only, it's one of the daughters, you can change the percentage. And you can say, instead of it going equally to my 3 daughters, I want 100% to go to 1 daughter. You're allowed to do that. So that's the chiddush of our Mishnah, maybe, that you can change the Yerusha for your sons and for your daughters. So let's read that inside. It says the Gemara, says Rav Papa, no, not Rav Papa, Rabbi Ravashi, Elam Ravashi, Hachi Kamar, Echad ben habanim, whether it's one son among many sons, or Echad bat ben habanot, or one daughter among many daughters, Im Amar Yiresh Konech Chasai, if the father says, I want that son or that daughter to get everything, then his words are fulfilled. Dvarav kayamin. And that is the chiddush of our Mishnah. Kiman Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka. Says, well, that's why do we need a Mishnah to tell us that? There's a Mishnah later on, we're going to have in a couple of days. Hakatani lekaman. Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka Omer, and this is a quote from a Mishnah later. Im Amar, if a man who's dying says, or he writes, Amisha ra'oi li yarsho, I want to give everything that I have to someone who is part of the Yerusha, meaning one of the sons or one of the daughters, Dvarav Kayamim. Then his words are good. But if he says it al Misha Eino Roi the Yarsho, he says it to, a charity or a stranger or a shul or whatever who's not part of his Yerusha, Ein Dvarav Kayamim. His words don't mean anything. So why would our Mishnah have to say this halacha if Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka talks about it later? Says the Gemara, well, sometimes you repeat something, because if you have a machloket, which we're going to have in the Mishnah later, maybe Rabbi Yehuda Nasi wanted to say, oh, it's a machloket, but you should know that we conclude like Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, and that's why our Mishnah, which is Stam, our Mishnah doesn't have a name, is saying this halacha. So maybe that's the whole point, that later on it's a machloket, but our Mishnah is saying, it's not a machloket, the halacha is like Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka. So maybe that's why our Mishnah is telling us. Maybe the purpose of our Mishnah is kasatam lan ki Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, to tell you a Stam Mishnah like Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka's innovation, that you can change the Yerusha as long as you change it to someone who is anyways part of your inheritance. That would be great, except the order doesn't make any sense. Because remember, we've said that principle is true if you have a machloket in a Mishnah and a later Mishnah has a Stam. Then we say, initially it was a machloket, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi and the group decided like the Stam Mishnah, right? But here, the first Mishnah is Stam, because this is our Mishnah that comes first. The Mishnah later is where Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka is going to have a machloket about this. So it's not, it wouldn't be useful to do that anyways, because it's Stam v'achar kach machloket. It's a Stam Mishnah first, a subsequent Mishnah where it's a debate, and Stam v'achar kach machloket, and halacha kistam. When you say that, you don't then paskin like the Stam. It's only if you have the inverse. So there'd be no point in our Mishnah, because it's a machloket. It's going to be a machloket later. Why add another Mishnah and say the exact same thing if it doesn't prove to you that you paskin that way? And again, the same question we've had all along, which is that anyways, it has nothing to do with the second clause of the Mishnah, the Od, my Ella, right?
But we don't know when the necessarily the order of the Mishnah when they were redacted. There was a group that was learning in this Beit Midrash, and then they were brighted outside and so forth. We don't. What we have today is a Seder, but that time they may have learned. They might have put down Nashim first, and then it was Shabbat, and then it was Brachot, and so forth. So to say that one comes before the other, we don't know. The Ein Mukdam Muchar b'Torah.
First of all, that's Ein Mukdam Muchar b'Torah does not mean in the Mishnah.
Okay, I understand that, but it's the same concept.
That is not. So what you just said is not correct. It's unequivocally wrong. Just to be clear, don't make any mistake. The Mishnah is Misudar. There's an order of the Mishnah. The tradition is Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi is the one who edited and put together the Mishnah. There were thousands of Braitot that went into it. Some made it and some didn't make it. But there is an order to the Mishnah. Now, there's some question about whether there's an order in the Sidarim, like you just said. But certainly within a Masechet, and really even within a Seder, there's definitely order. So our Mishnah is here. The Mishnah that Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka is going to be in a few days, right, is later on in the same parak. There's clearly an order to the Mishnah that was set up by the editor of the Mishnah, who by tradition was Rabbi Yehuda Nasi and his Beit Din. So that was the whole point of the Mishnah, right? So that's our question here, is why author this Mishnah if there's another Mishnah that tells you the exact same thing, right? We never asked that question about a Braita, right? Say, why have a Mishnah if there's a Braita that tells you the exact same thing? The Tosefta always has complementary opinions to the Mishnah, right? That's all the time we quote it. So the question is a Mishnah to another Mishnah. Ella, now we're 4 lines from the bottom. Amar Mar Bar Ravashi, says Mar Bar Ravashi. I think it's very interesting to point out that Mar Bar Ravashi, I looked this up today, and I think he was the 8th generation of Amoraim. His father Ravashi is traditionally the one who wrote the Gemara. But Mar Bar Ravashi, or edited, was his son was 7th or 8th generation of Amoraim, so 200 or more years after Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. But he says, I can explain to you what the Mishnah is telling you. And you wonder, what were they thinking for the last 200 years? But says Mar Bar Avashi, Hachi Ka'amar, this is the point of our Mishnah. Echad haben ve'echad habat, both a son and a daughter who inherit from their parents, inherit both nichsei ha'av, which we know from Slav Chad, but also nichsei ha'im. And that's the innovation of our Mishnah, is that it's not just that a father who dies without sons gives his Yerusha to his daughters. A mother who dies without sons also gives her Yerusha to your daughter. And we had no previous source of that, right? So we didn't know that. And that's the Chiddush of our Mishnah. And then, of course, the beauty now is that the next words in the Mishnah make perfect sense. Ella, says the Mishnah, that a ben who's a Bechor gets pishnayim, only pishnayim b'nichsei ha'av, ve'eno notel pishnayim b'nichsei ha'im. So it's a beautiful explanation of the Mishnah, that the Mishnah is referring to the Chiddush of our Mishnah is that a son and a daughter, the Chiddush is the daughter, I'm sorry, not the daughter. The Chiddush is that they get equal portion, not just in the father's portion, but also in the mother's portion, which we didn't know till now, and now we know that. So
So
then,
if they get equal, how can you say the ben gets pishnayim?
I mean, that's Ben gets 2 portions.
But so it's not equal.
I mean,
They're
it's
not
right.
equal. The
Correct.
ben is not equal to the bat.
So that's a separate issue, but that is correct. A Ben, a Bechor gets 2 portions. But
So
the
to
point is
say that
that-
they inherit equally is not correct then, right?
It is so the rule of inheritance from a father is the same as the rule of inheritance from a mother. That's the Chiddush of our Mishnah. That everything that's true from a father is also, at least in this context, is also true about a mother.
So then the ben would get pishnayim from the mother too, right?
No.
Why not? Everything it's same with the mother and father, then
I agree. You're correct. We're going to get to that in a second, but that's what the next clause. Except, says the Mishnah, that's you got to keep reading, right? Everything is the same in Yerusha from a mother or a father, except for Bechorah. Now, the Chiddush of the Mishnah. So what are you telling
Why
me?
doesn't the husband
Sorry,
inherit? Why doesn't her spouse inherit her?
her spouse is dead, maybe, or divorced.
So he died first and she got everything? No, he
No,
died
she has her
first
own stuff. He dies, his stuff goes to his kids. But they have
and
to
she had
support them.
separate stuff from her parents or something?
Yeah, she went into the marriage, or she was a really great businesswoman, and made a lot of money.
Okay.
There's no limit on that, especially if she's not married. Tanu Rabbanan. Now says the Bright to something I told you. I introduced this to you guys yesterday. We're finally up to today's daf at 8 o'clock. The second line from the bottom. It says in the pasuk that a bechor gets latet lo pishnayim. The question we had that I introduced yesterday is, what does pishnayim mean? A bechor gets a second portion. Does that mean pishnayim ke'echad, meaning 1 extra portion, right? Oh, or is it? Sorry, where am I? Ato omer pishnayim ke'echad. Now, I'm sorry. The Bright says a quote. Latet lo pishnayim means pishnayim ke'echad, 1 extra portion. Ask the Braita, Ato omer pishnayim ke'echad, o einu el pishnayim b'chol nechasim. Maybe he gets a double portion of all of the possessions, as I explained to you yesterday. Let's say there's 4 sons, right? And the Bechor gets, there are 4 portions. A Bechor gets a 5th portion, so he gets 2/5. Or maybe the 3 sons each get a portion, and the Bechor gets 6 portions, right? So he gets 2/3. So how do you view it? Does he get double of everything, or does he get 1 extra portion? Says the Braita, I'll explain it to you, Dinhu. It is a logical conclusion. You have to decide logically. Turn to the top, Kuf Chuf Gemel Amid Aleph. Chelko im echad. Sometimes you split it up with 1 brother. Remember, if there's no brothers, you're not a Bechor. You just get everything, right? But if you have 1 brother, makes you a Bechor. And sometimes you got 5 brothers or more. But Chelko im chamisha. Sometimes there's many brothers. Ma chelko im echad. Just like if you get with 1 brother, right? So the only way it could happen is that there's 2 brothers. One's a Bechor, he gets 2 portions. The other brother gets 1. He's getting 1 extra portion. So it's pishnayim ke'echad. He's getting 1 extra portion. Af chelko im chamisha. So too, if you split it with 5 brothers, then he gets 1 extra portion. Pishnayim ke'echad. So well, you could look at it the other way too, right? You can look at it from the other perspective, which is chelko im echad, chelko im chamisha. Sometimes 1 brother splits it with a second brother, sometimes with 5 brothers. Ma chelko im echad, when he splits it with 1 brother, he gets pishnayim b'kol nechasim. He gets double the whole estate. right? There's two brothers. There's $100,000 in the estate. He gets 2/3, and the other brother gets 1/3. So maybe Av Chalkom Chamisha, then when he splits it up with 5 brothers, he should get double the entire estate. Pishnayim b'kol hanichasim. That the Bechor should get 2/3, and the other brothers could split the 1/3 that's left behind. Talmud Lomar, therefore the pasuk in the Rashbam understands that this is because this pasuk that we're about to quote is extra. It says V'haya biyom hanchilo et banav. It'll be on the day when you give nachla to your sons, and that implies a Torah ripta nachla itzalachim, that there's extra money for the brothers. And obviously, in the second case I gave, if there's 5 brothers and the Bechor gets 2/3, there's not a lot left for the 4 remaining brothers. So therefore, ein alecha ladon kilashon ha'acharon. Don't learn the second way, which is that the Bechor gets double, right, of all the estate. Ela kilashon harishon. It's the first way, where the Bechor gets 1 extra portion, but not double all the other brothers. That's one proof. Vomer, now we got another proof for you. And of course, this other proof you're going to see in a second comes from Divrei HaYamim, which is not a place where we generally bring proofs from. But we'll see that maybe it's actually just a smachta, or maybe it's explanation of the Torah. But let's see the pasuk. Pasuk in Divrei HaYamim goes through the genealogy of the Jewish people, and it says the following very interesting pasuk. Ubenei Reuven, the sons of Reuven, who was the Bechor Yisrael. He was the Bechor of his father Yisrael, right? Ki hu ha-Bechor. He was born first. Ubechilelo yitzue aviv, when he desecrated the bed of his father, which is the story in the pasuk of when his father
Bila.
Bila, natna bechorato lebnei Yosef ben Yisrael. The Bechor was given to the sons of Yosef. This is all the pasuk in Divrei Yamim. Velo lehityaches lebechora. And Ruvain is no longer mityuchas to get the Bechor. He's no longer Ruvain ha-Bechor. Now it goes to Yosef. Okay? So we see that Yosef is the Bechor. Now, what is the proof of that? Because further, V'omer, it says, and this pasuk is the next pasuk actually, Ki Yehuda gavar ba'achiv. Yehuda was the strongest of all the brothers. Uli nagid mimenu, and he was the nagid. Nagid's like the governor or the minister or the president, whatever. He was the king. Ha-Bechora li Yosef. And the Bechor went to Yosef. So the pasuk repeats, the Bechorah went to Yosef. So says the Braita now, Nemra Bechorah Yosef. Yosef was the Bechor among his father's sons, even though he, of course, was not firstborn. But it says Bechor by Yosef. And it says Bechorah L'Dorot. Torah says about every single man throughout history who has children, who has sons, that his first son is the Bechor. Ma Bechorah HaMorah Yosef Pishnayim Ke'echad. Just like Yosef did not get double his brothers, he got 1 extra portion. Af Bechorah HaMorah L'Dorot Pishnayim Ke'echad. So too, for all generations, if you're a Bechor, you're like Yosef. You get 1 extra portion. Now, the Gemara is going to ask in a minute, how do we know Yosef didn't get double his brothers? But we're assuming he did. The Omer, and a third seeming proof is that it says, of course, this is Yosef. Yaakov said this when he was dying, right? He said to his son Yosef, I gave you 1 extra shchem, or 1 extra portion over your brothers. I took it from the Amorim with my sword and my bow. Now, ask the Braita, since we're on an Agarta kick today, what do you mean? You think Yaakov really fought the Amorim? He actually fought them with his sword and his bow. The pasuk says, now it's a funny thing because it's a pasuk in Tehillim. It says, "Hilo bekashti eftach." I don't trust my keshet, my sword, my bow. Charbi lo tesheni, and my sword doesn't save me. So clearly, Yaakov was not relying on his sword and his bow. Ella, this means charbi zu tefillah. My sword is my prayer. Kashti zu bakasha, and my keshet is another turn it around is my bakasha. Says the Gemara, what the heck is this Braita talking about? Why is the Braita bring 3 proofs, right? What's wrong with the first one? Maiva Omer, because maybe you'll say that the extra verse, I told you was extra, but later we're going to say that this is one of the proofs for Rabbi Yochanan Mibroka, that you're allowed to give your money to whichever son you want, even if the Torah says give it to all of them. So maybe that's Chidei Mahaylik Rabbi Yochanan Mibroka Uda'ata. So therefore we have another proof, Tashma from Divrei Yamim, where it says, Ubenei Reuven Bechor Yisrael. Now, that might not be a proof because Yosef was called in that pasuk. It said that Yosef was, when we read the verse, it said Yosef was the Bechorah, but maybe it was only him. It's not for all time. Sorry, but it says the Bechorato, right? It says the word Bechorato, Lo Gamrina, Tashma. So therefore, we bring the second pasuk in Divrei Yamim, which says Bechora li Yosef. So it doesn't say Bechorato, which would imply his own personal one. It implies a general concept of Bechor. The Chitema, now you might ask.
Why do you want to say Yosef was the Bechor? You want to say he's the Bechor of Rachel? I mean, what do you mean he's the Bechor from what?
The pasuk, you just read the pasuk with me. He was the Bechor of Yaakov.
No, but we're saying he's not. I mean, he wasn't. Reuven was the Bechor.
And because Ruvain was transgressed,
Okay.
Yosef was made the Bechor of his father. I'll read the
But
word.
it's-
It says,
But we're trying to use that to bring it a proof. But it's
Natna Bechorato, the Bnei Yosef ben Yisrael. So Yosef is the Bechor. And we're proving from there that just like when we say Yosef is the Bechor, it means he got one extra portion. So too, every future Bechor gets one extra portion, not double all the other brothers. So ask the Gemara now, B'chitema, you're going to ask, how do you know Yosef didn't get double all the brothers? How do you know Yosef got one extra portion? Yosef Gufe, Mimai, the Pishnayim Ke'achad Have. How do you know he only got double, meaning one extra portion? So therefore, Tashma, we have a proof from this final pasuk in Parshat Vayechi, where Yaakov says to him, Ani natati lecha shchem echad alachecha. I gave you one extra portion over your brothers. I didn't give you double, I gave you one extra portion. Says Gemara, well, you don't know that's a portion means the same as all of them. Maybe he meant I give you one extra tree, meaning it could be anything. It doesn't mean it's equal portion. Amrlei said to him, well, lecha markra. There's another pasuk which we've skirted around this whole time, which is Ephraim u'Menashe keReuven v'Shimon Yuli. Right? That in fact we know what happened with Yosef. He got two sons who got individual portions.
so
like
that's two portions. That's like a Bechor.
So therefore, we learn from Yosef, this is one shot, that just like Yosef is called a Bechor, and his Bechorah does not mean double, it means one extra portion, so too for all history, for all humanity, Bechor gets one extra portion and not double all the other brothers. So that is the proof. Okay, now it's a little weak because it's from Divrei Yamim, but that's the proof.
But no, you got even from Chumash, where Yosef had two sons, and they were each considered tribes.
Yeah, but it doesn't say anything about Bechor in the Chumash.
Doesn't have to. We can derive that. We say that he got two portions, one from Ephraim, one from Menashe.
Yeah, but it doesn't say that he's a Bechor. That wasn't prove anything to you, right? The proof we have that Yosef is the Bechor is from the pasuk in Divrei Yamim, where it says clearly that he took it away from Ruvain, who was the Bechor, and gave it to Yosef, and he became the Bechor. So that's how we proved it.
It doesn't say that he lost the Bechor in Bereshit.
It says that he was punished. But it doesn't say that Yosef became the Bechor, right? So Ruvain loses his special place, but it doesn't. How do you know Yosef got two portions because of the Bechor? That's what we learned from Divrei Yamim. Now,
No, but you learn Achad al we quote the pasuk Achad Shchem al Achecha Shchem Achad al Achecha.
2 lines up. Anina tati lecha Shchem echad al achecha.
Right, so that's an extra portion.
Correct, but it doesn't say Bechor. I don't understand what the point. You said the same argument many times here. So the only proof that it's a Bechor is from the pasuk in Divrei Yamim, which speaks it out very clearly. Okay, continues the Gemara. Rabbi Chelbo asked Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani, I don't know, hopefully everyone has the place around a third of the way down. Ma ra'a Yaakov shenatal bechora mi Ruvain v'natna Yosef. Why did Yaakov decide to take the Bechor from Ruvain and give it to Yosef? Says, what do you mean, what did he say? We just read the pasuk. Ma ra'a, I'll quote you the pasuk in Divrei Yamim. It says, U'bechalelo yitzuei aviv k'tiv. It says that Ruvain desecrated the bed of his father. Ella says, that's not the question why he took it away from Ruvain. Ella ma ra'a shenatal Yosef. Why did all of a sudden he give it to Yosef? Why did he give it to Yehuda or Shimon?
Yehuda was Nagid.
Why did he give it? Okay. Emshalecha mashal lema davar dama, says Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani, I'll give you a parable. What is this comparable to? L'balabayit shegadal yatom b'toch beito. You have a house, and they bring in an orphan kid who has no money, no food. The mashal here, of course, is the balabayit is Yosef, and the orphan is Yaakov, his father, who he brought into his house in Mitzrayim when they were starving and they were in the middle of a famine. Liyamim, as time goes by, the orphan makes it big, and Ha'ashir becomes rich. Ha'ashir oto yatom. Valmarni says, I'm going to give money. I'm going to repay the person who helped me get started. So here too, Yaakov was desperate and Yosef supported him. So when Yaakov was coming to die, he said, I'm going to give an extra portion. I got an extra Bechorah to give away because I took it away from Ruvain. I'm going to give it to Yosef. Amar Le. So now Reb Chelba said to Rishmor Nachmeni, I don't get it. It seems like Yaakov should owe Yosef something no matter what. You're saying he gave it to Yosef because Ruvain did a sin. And if Ruvain had not done the sin, he wouldn't have paid him back. Ilav dechata Ruvain lo mahani le Yosef lo midam. He wouldn't have given him anything. Ella Reb Yonatan Rabcha. Said Reb Chelbo to Reb Shmuel Nachmeni, Reb Shmuel Nachmeni's teacher was Reb Yonatan. I heard from your name of your Rebbe, Reb Yonatan, Lokach Amar. He didn't say what you said. He said, Ru'ya hayta b'chor latzeit min Rachel. The truth is that it was really supposed to be the case that the first child of Yaakov would come from Rachel. Shin tichtiv, because the pasuk says, Ela toldot Yaakov Yosef. That the first inherit, the tolda of Yaakov is Yosef. Yosef was meant to be the born of Yaakov. Ella shekadmata Leah berachamim. But Leah snuck ahead and got the first son because of compassion. We'll see what the compassion was in a second. Umituch tzniut daba berachel, but because of the tremendous tzniut, and tzniut here does not mean the way we translate use modesty, but I would say sensitivity or privacy. Because of the tremendous sensitivity of Rachel, she got it back. Hichzira kadosh baruch hu la. What are we talking about? My kadmata Leah berachamim. How did Leah, through compassion, get the bechorah that was supposed to go to her sister Rachel? Because the pasuk says ve'inei Leah rakot. The eyes of Leah were rakot, which usually means they were soft, or they were moist, they didn't look good, right? They like a face that looks soft. Many women, I think, try, and men too, to have a face that does not look so soft, right? This is before Botox. So my rakot, says Gemara, ile merakot mamash, means really that her face was droopy and not looking nice. Efshar bikunut behimat meya lo diber katuv. The Torah tries sometimes, at least, to not say negative things, right? It tries to speak nicely. It doesn't even say that an animal is tameh. It says, Shenam dichtiv, min ha-behima Torah, you should eat from the behima Torah, umin ha-behima, asher einenu tahora. Right? It doesn't say the behima that's tameh, it says the behima that's not tahor. So now, of course, sometimes it does say behima tameah, but there are times where the Torah goes out of its way to try to be more kind with its language. So it's going to start talking about Leah and saying she was ugly. Question mark. El Amar Belazar. You know what it means? It doesn't mean her eyes were soft. It means that her schut was rakot from arukot. It was long. Arukot. The gifts that she got lasted for centuries, for generations. Her gifts of kuna and leviah of her children, they went on for generations and generations, right? And kingship too, right? She was from Yehuda. That's Rav Elazar. Rav says what we all know because Rashi quotes it. Lolam rakot mamash. It means that her eyes really were ugly. But it's not a genai. It's not saying that she was ugly by saying she was ugly. It's a praise that she was ugly because Shahida Shomata Prashata Drachim. She heard in Prashat Drachim, which is what we call Twitter nowadays, right? She heard the people chattering on the exchange. Bnei Adam, people were chattering. Shayu Omrim Shnei Banim Yeshal Rivka, right? Rivka, who married Yitzchak, had two sons, Esav and Yaakov. Shnei Banot Yeshal Lavan. Lavan, her brother, had two daughters. The seems to be that they're going to get married because, of course, that's what Avram did, right? He brought his son back, or Yitzchak was brought a wife from Betuel. Lavan, presumably his kids are going to marry Rivka's kids. So Gedolah legadol v'katana lekatan. The older Leah will go to Esav, and Rachel will go to Yaakov. And so she would ask, what do we know about this guy? Gadol ma ma'asav, and they said, Ish Rahu, he's evil. Milastim briot, he's a bandit. Katan ma ma'asav, what about the younger one? Ish tam, Yoshevo halim. So Haita Bocheh, so Leah was so sad about this that she died her eyelids or eyelashes, I guess, fell out, and she looked ugly because of that, because she was constantly crying. But that, of course, was a praise that she cared so much. And this is what the Torah says, Hashem saw that Leah was hated, and he opened her womb. Now the pasuk continues, right? What do you mean, snu'ah? The Torah would not describe a person that way, even if it was true, right? Snu'ah mamash, that she was literally hated. Of course, the Torah wouldn't say that. And same quote we had before. Efshar bignut behemat me'er lo diber katuv. The Torah doesn't say anything bad about animals. Bignut tzadikim diber katuv ela ra'ah kadosh baruch hu shesnu'am ma'asei Esav bifaneh. God saw that she hated Esav's ma'asim, and she was so righteous that God opened her womb by yiftach et rachma, and she had the firstborn son. But Rachel got it back. How did Rachel get it back? What was the, again, not modesty necessarily, but what was the privacy and the compassion and the, I'd say the word sensitivity fits here. What was the sensitivity that Rachel showed?
But what was the Hava? I mean, it says, Kodesh Baruch Hu says that she realized that Esav's actions, behavior were bad, but she was already married to Yaakov, but Esav was out of the picture. Why was it relevant? If before she was married and they said she was destined to marry Esav, which there's a midrash like that, then okay. But at this point, why is it? It doesn't. I don't understand the chronology here.
So sorry. So the chronology is that because she was so because Esav's actions were so hateful to her before she married Yaakov, she merited to jump Rachel in line and be the one who got to have the first child. So it was due to what she did before she was married. So that's why it was originally the Bechorah was supposed to come from Rachel, but because of Leah's actions, because of her great actions, she was bumped up, let's say. And says the Gemara, but because Rachel's great actions, she replaced her. But she didn't replace her actually in having the firstborn. She replaced her that ultimately, when Reuven sinned and got lost, Rachel was next in line, and it didn't go to Yehuda or Shimon or Levi or someone before him. And what is that? What did Rivka do? What did Rachel do? What was the tremendous sensitivity that Rachel showed? Because it says that you gave Yaakov the Rachel. Yaakov told his aunt, his lover Rachel, or future marriage, ki achi aviyahu, that he was the brother of her father, the chi ben Rivka, and he was the son of Rivka. Now he's not, of course, the brother of her father; he's a nephew, right? Hello ben achot aviyahu. He was the son of the mother of the sister of her father. Ella Amar La, what she said to him, he said to her, minsavitli, right? Yaakov saw Rachel, he fell in love. Torah says he said to her, "Let's get married." Amrle, she said, I would love to marry you. Mio, however, abara ma'ohu. My father is not an honest guy. V'lo yachlitla, he's not going to let us get married. Amrle said to her, what do you mean? How's he going to trick it? What's he going to do? Myram ute. Amrle, so she said to Rachel, told Yaakov, itli achtadik shisha minai. I've got an older sister who's not married, and he won't let me get married before her. Lo mitzvah li mikama, he won't let me get married before her. Amrla, so Yaakov said, don't worry, I can handle your father. Achiva ani b'rama'ut. I am his brother, meaning I can play games with him. So she said to him, well, 1 second. I'm not sure I want to marry someone who plays games with my father, right? Amalei, misharlu tzadiki l'skuya bramuta. Are righteous people allowed to act like unjust like my father? And Amalei, he said to her, yes, because the pasuk says, im navar titabar im akish titapal. With one who is off the path, you can act that way. One who's crooked, you can be crooked, meaning you can reflect them, even though you wouldn't act that way on your own. You can fight them with fire.
Where does he get this pasuk? Where does Yaakov? Shmuel lived 400 years later than him. Whatever.
The point is that if the principle was true in Shmuel's day, it was true in Yaakov's day, right? The values are values. So that's the value that is expressed later in the Torah. So therefore, what did Yaakov do?
Emoting b'Torah.
I like it. Okay. So what did Yaakov do? Of course, we all know the story. But Yaakov, remember, it was pitch black at night, and they didn't know each other, right? So we know that that Lavan was going to switch. They were going to have a big ceremony. He marries Rachel, goes to bed, and it's Leah, right? Of course, the ceremony then was really sleeping with them, so that's all that mattered. But Yaakov said, well, look, I can't turn on the lights, right? That's inappropriate. But let's have some secret call signal, right? I'll have some message, simanim we call them, right? Some signs that I'll say something, you'll say something, and we'll determine if it's really her. And of course, if it's not her, I'll scream out, there's something wrong, we'll turn on the lights, the people will come in, and the whole thing will be revealed. So Masar la simanim. He gave his Rachel secret signs. Kika ma'ayli la Leah, right? Now, when Lavan fulfilled his trickery and he put Leah in place of Rachel when it was time to go up to bed, Savra, Rachel suddenly thought, look, this is terrible. She's going to be exposed for a fraud. They're going to, rip off. It's going to be tremendous embarrassment. She'll never find the life. She'll be so sad about this. And her sensitivity to what it would mean for Leah led her to giving over the signs. So let me read that. Savra hashta michsafa achtai. My sister's going to be super embarrassed by this whole affair. So masartinu nila. So she gave her the signs. And therefore, Yaakov had no idea that it was Leah and not Rachel. And he slept with her and he consummated the marriage. And that's what the pasuk means when it says, "Ayiba boker." The morning came, v'hinehu Leah, right? And it was Leah. Haya Leah. What do you mean? Only in the morning it was Leah. At night it wasn't. Because Yaakov had given signs to Rachel, she gave them to her sister Leah. Yaakov didn't know until that time. And so therefore, really, originally it should have been Rachel had the first son. Because Leah was righteous, she merited to have the first son. But because Rachel was also righteous, when that son lost it, it went back to Yosef, her firstborn son. Now,
It's interesting because they were twin sisters.
well, Leah was older.
I understand, but they were by an hour. I don't know, but
Yeah,
they
but
were
you know,
twin sisters.
Yaakov and Esau were twin brothers too,
Okay, whatever. But so they were twin sisters. So Leah could have kept this from him for 20 years. She didn't. If he didn't recognize her then at night or in the morning, how did he ultimately know that it was Leah?
There was no lights at night.
I understand that, but if they were twins, identical twins, let's say, he may never know.
You just made a big jump there. I assume they were not identical twins, right? And remember, Leah's eyes didn't look so good. So anyways, there were differences. Now, let's try to do maybe 10 more minutes so that we can get far along on Amabet. Bo'emine Abba Khalifa Kriva Abba. Abba, and we'll see why we're quoting this. This has nothing to do with anything of Bava Batra, but it has to do with the earlier question about the children. So Abba Khalifa asked Reb Chia bar Abba, if you look at the count of the Jews who went down to Egypt, if you look at the general statement, it says, Kol Nefesh Yotzei Yaakov who went down to Mitzrayim were 70, right? Bichlalan Ata Motzaei Shivim. It says there were 70. But if you count the names, the Pirtan, if you count the individuals, Ata Motzaei Shivim Chasar Echad, there's only 69, right?
Yeah, but we went through this about 2 days ago. 3 days ago.
I know. I was telling you it was coming. He said, Dina. Dina had a sister. I'm not sure why we didn't mention her, but Dina was one of two. Because the pasuk says, V'et Dina bito. The V'et and Dina and her partner. So there were two Dinas. Not two, but there was a sister with Dina. Let's Gemara 1 second. Because it says the same name of Binyamin. Turn the page to Kuf Chav Gimel with Bet. It says, V'et Binyamin achiv ben imo. Right? So you mean there was a sister with Binyamin, then there would have been 71. Amar, so he said, I didn't want to tell you the answer because I have a great answer, but I don't really want it out there on the internet, right? Margolit tova haita biyadi. I had this beautiful, precious jewel of an answer to explain this in my hand. And you're now, by forcing me, he was playing games with him, Rashbam says. He was being mechaded. He was trying to force him to work it out of him. But now, now I'm going to lose it. It's going to be shared with the whole world. But I'll share it with you. Hachi Amar Rabbi Chama bar Chanina Zu Yocheved. The 70th person was Yocheved, who was not born when they went down to Egypt, but she was in the womb. Shehorata b'derech. She was conceived on the way. Uvleidata ben achomot. Maybe she was not conceived on the way, but she was pregnant. Her mother was pregnant with her on the way, and she was born when they came in the walls, meaning after they came to Mitzrayim.
In the journey. Yeah, we saw this Gemara 3 days ago, maybe.
Shenemar Asher Yolda Otel Levi bim Mitzrayim. She was born in Mitzrayim, meaning Leidata bim Mitzrayim, but she was not conceived in Mitzrayim. Her mother was already pregnant with her in the journey, and she is the 70th number. Ein Ho'ata bim Mitzrayim. Now, one more question. We're going to get to the wide lines. Ba'aminei Rabbi Chamba bar Shmuel bar Nachmani.
Wait, hold on. Yocheved is the daughter of Levi?
Yocheved is daughter of Levi, correct.
And her husband Amram is
the grandson of Levi.
So she married her nephew?
She married her nephew, correct.
Okay. Clarifying.
But they're not allowed to after Matan Torah.
Well, it's a good thing they got married before Matan Torah. This continues the Gemara. Where are we? Tivit says, Yosef, the continuation of the pasuk is, when Rachel gave birth to Yosef, Yaakov went to Lavan and said, I'm ready to go home. Says, what's the connection? Why does Yosef's birth have to do with him ready to go home? My shnaki et yalid Yosef. What happened when Yosef was born? Amar le, he said to him, what was him, to who? Rishmor Nachmani said to Reb Chelbo, Ra'a Yaakov Avinu shein zaro shel Esav nimsar b'yad zaro shel Yosef. Yaakov learned the tradition, as he learned the pasuk from very, very much later, that from Ovadia Hanavi, that the children of Esav, or Esav himself in this case, would only be defeated by the spirit that came along with Yosef. So until Yaakov gave birth to Yosef, he didn't want to go back and confront his brother Esav. Shnemar, because the pasuk describes much, much later, of course, Haya Beit Yaakov Eish, the house of Yaakov will be the fire, it will be the flame, the fire. Beit Yosef lehava, Yosef will be the flame that will come out of that fire, and Beit Esav lekash, and Esav will be the straw that will be burnt up. But you need Yosef in order to start attacking Esav. Okay, so that's why you have to wait till Yosef was born. Once Yosef was born, Yaakov said, "I'm ready to go back home." Eitvei asked the Gemara, "What about the pasuk?"
You said he wanted to leave earlier, though, right?
Well, he left. He said he wanted to leave then. He had to wait 6 more years, but he said he was ready to leave once Yosef was born. Eitvei asked the Gemara, "What about the pasuk?" It talks about this crazy story at the end of Shmuel, if you recall, where whatever, it's a crazy story, but David wanted to fight against the Jews, right? David was whatever. It was a very, very funny story at the end of Shmuel. The bottom line is David goes to Avimelech, I think, or whoever it was, someone in Gaza, whatever the Plishtim were, and he wants to fight with them against Shaul, but he doesn't end up doing it. They end up kicking him out. He goes back home, and it turns out that his whole camp was attacked by Amalek, and he goes to fight Amalek. So the pasuk says, "Vayakim David killed them, the Amalekis, mehaneshef ad ha'erev, from the morning to the night, limarchatam, the next day." And of course, David is not from Yosef. So how could David, who comes from Yehuda, from Yaakov, but not through Yosef, how could he kill Amalek if he's not from Yosef? Amar le, he said to him, "Well, it's a good question, but clearly you didn't pay attention to the whole school. Da'akrech nevi'im. Clearly you read the Nevi'im, but you didn't get to the Ketuvim. Lo akrech TV. You didn't get to the Ketuvim because when the story is told, the same story in Divrei Hayamim, it's funny today we quote Divrei Hayamim many times. It says there, Dichtiv belechto el Tziklag, when David went to Tziklag to fight against Amalek, Naflu alav mi Menashe, he was partnered with from Shevet Menashe the following people: Edna, V'Yozevet, V'Yidiel, Michael, V'Yozevet, V'Elihu, V'Tzoti, Rosh Halafim Asher Menashe. So he had help from Menashe, which is exactly what his great-grandfather Yaakov had, help from Yosef, right? So David could not fight Amalek unless he had help from Menashe. Motzaei of Yosef, what about the following story where it says...
Ketuvim. Divrei Yamim is that from Ketuvim?
Yeah,
we said the Ketuvim were the five books, Esther,
those are also
Echa,
Ketuvim.
what?
Those are also Ketuvim, but Divrei Yamim is Ketuvim, yeah.
I thought it was part of the Navi, no? I don't know.
Motzaei Yosef, Umehen, there's another pasuk in Divrei Yamim which says, Mehem min bnei Shimon olchu har Seir. That from Bnei Shimon they went to Har Seir, Anashim chamesh meot, there were 500 men, Uplatia, Unarev, Rafia, Vaziel, Bnei Yishai, Berosham, and whatever, these are the names. Yaakov Sherit HaPleita Amalek. They killed the rest of Amalek. Remember, we always say Amalek came from Esav, because Amalek did come from Esav, but right, that's always what we're talking about here. So what about here? It was Shimon. They live there till today. So you see Shimon can kill Esav. Amar Rabbi Rashila, no. Yishi was Mibnei Menashe. That Shimon went and joined these people, including Bnei Yishi, who were from Menashe. Dichtiv u'Bnei Menashe chefer v'Yishi. So you see that he had to get a partner from Menashe, because in order to fight Edom, in order to fight Esav or Amalek, you have to have some from the family of Yosef in order to make that happen. If you don't, you're out of luck.
Well, where do we get that? But it's a chiyuv on every generation. We learn from the Chumash that we have to fight Amalek. It doesn't matter who you are, where you come from. Not everyone is from Menashe.
It doesn't say only Menashe can do it. It says you have to partner with them. Of course, we didn't ask a question, as you probably noticed, from Shaul, who went and killed them. But Shaul came from Binyamin, of course, right? So maybe it's not just Yosef, it's all the children, the families of Yosef, which include Binyamin. Maybe not. Anyways, we're not gonna solve this today. We're gonna stop here, even though we're not quite there, but we made up good progress. And God willing, tomorrow morning at 7:45 a.m., we will continue from the second to last narrow line, Tanu Rabbanan, and we will finish the daf. Okay. good Agarita. A lot of this is familiar to people, of course. It's always good to review it and learn it again.
Thank you, Ali.
You're welcome. Shavua
Okay.
Tov, everyone. I'll hopefully see you tomorrow morning, 7:45 in 11 hours.
All right.
Good night.
Bye.